Hello and welcome to the PrizePicks Prop Show. My name is Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuce 85. Not the normal face you guys see on the PrizePicks Prop Show, but coming up here to talk some college football with my friend Monotone Football Stewart. He has been crushing it all year with Mike Govier, and we're going to have some stuff for the college football national title. It's crazy to think that the season is coming to an end. It's kind of a bittersweet, always is for me. It's been a long grind this season with college basketball as well. So I'm kind of happy about that part so I can focus on one, but I'm definitely going to miss it. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good as well. It's kind of same thing for me. NFL and college football are kind of my two biggest things, and I'm watching them slowly, sail away. But we still got a week. We still got a game. I would be wishing for a situation like this in the middle of the summer. So now that we have it here, still got a game to make some money on. I'm excited, man. And I think this will be actually a really good football game. So even better.
Yeah, it's funny because just to get into this real quick, people continue it all year. TCU's been the luckiest football team. They won this game, and it's like all of a sudden they're in the national title. And it's like that's a lot of luck to be riding the whole year. At some point, people are going to have to admit to themselves this is a good football team. So, and funnily enough, the props that we're going to be recommending are kind of TCU heavy. So, if you guys aren't on PrizePicks yet already, we do have that 100% bonus match going on up to $100 with our code FTN. So make sure you guys get over there to PrizePicks, plug that in. If you're, haven't been delving into the props or PrizePicks and you're mostly into DFS and want to kind of expand yourself a little bit, props are really getting popular and taking over, and sports books are popping up everywhere as well. So that'll help you with some of that stuff as well. But yeah, we'll just dive right into it here and get into it. I'm going to start with my first one here, which is a TCU prop, Max Hacksaw Duggan, as I like to affectionately call him. I am leaning on his over 2 touchdowns. That's pass plus rush plus receiving touchdowns. Obviously, probably not going to get a receiving touchdowns, but I am pretty confident in his ability to get, perhaps 1 rushing touchdown, a couple of passing. It's been a really ridiculous year for him. Most of the country, I kind of touched on, has been tabbing them as the luckiest team, but here they are in the title game. It's really time for him to get that recognition that he deserves as a special talent. And, injury prone in the early part of his career, in and out of the lineup, but really kind of established himself. And early in the year, he wasn't even the starter for that first game, and he kind of just jostled his way back in. But to kind of put people's mind at ease here going against Georgia, he has been solid. 14 games this year, has thrown for over 3,500 yards, 32 touchdowns to his name, only 6 interceptions, very accurate when he throws, has a lot of talent around him. And it also has been a surprisingly strong, dual threat type guy with his legs. You wouldn't really realize it, especially lately, but he has an ability to rack up yardage and touchdowns on the ground. In fact, he almost has 650 yards on the ground to go along with 8 touchdowns. He's also scored 3+ touchdowns in 9 of 14 games. So the number to me feels pretty low considering, they're going to have to lean on him pretty heavily. Kendre Miller, their star, running back, is banged up. Not having him around possibly, or even being limited to a degree, they're really going to need Max to do some damage with his legs. And when they get into that red zone, I have no doubt that he'll call his number. As long as he gets, 1 rushing touchdown, I feel extremely confident about this number going over. Georgia's defense is a scary unit. People are going to be looking at this, I don't know, they're so tough. They've got all these NFL guys, which is true, but they haven't had that same juice as they've had early on. Earlier in the year, holding opponents, below 30 points pretty often. You look at who they played, though, some softer competition. And throughout the SEC, they were pretty solid. But recently, they gave up 30 to LSU. They gave up a bunch to Ohio State. Granted, I know Ohio State's offense is a different animal. But I think that game really laid out a blueprint for TCU to kind of go out here and especially the way that the performance of CJ Stroud, what they need to do to kind of challenge this Georgia defense and make them a little bit uncomfortable. So for me, I don't have any doubt that TCU has got the capability. I don't think they're lucky at this point. Early on, maybe I did. And I'm not saying they'll end up the national champions at the end of the night, but I'm pretty darn confident that Hacksaw is going to end up putting on a show to one last time this season to really remind people what this TCU football and how special that they really were, and score that, minimum of 3 touchdowns, possibly more. So I'm pretty darn confident in his ability to do so. So that's it with the Duggan. And I think you have a Mad Max prop that you want to talk about as well. So we'll jump into that. I'll throw that up on the board right now and lay it on us.
Sounds good. I love everything you just said right there. That's also one of my favorite props on the board. 2 touchdowns just feels like such a safe floor for him, right? I mean, it almost feels like the worst case scenario is like a push right there. And that's what we love. And I'm kind of taking that same thought process right here. I'm going over 20.5 fantasy score. If you don't know what this is, think fantasy football, right? You're getting points accumulated for everything you do. So it's not just the passing, it's not just the rushing, it's not just the touchdown, it's everything, right? We're getting a combination of everything. And that's really what I like here in this TCU team. You kind of mentioned it. Ohio State laid out the blueprint last week. They kind of showed this Georgia defense is good. There's no doubt about it, but there are certain ways you can attack them. And obviously we're going to have that game film. We're going to see how did they score those points right there. And hey, TCU's got some talent. That's a strong offensive line. They have a wide receiver that's going to be drafted likely in the first 15 picks of the draft right here. This is not a team you want to sleep on. When you look at his two back-to-back biggest games of the season, over 32 fantasy score in both those games. And that's with some turnovers along with it, right? It's not like those were his prettiest games in the world. Had a couple turnovers in those ones as well, but he still powered through. And like, if you look at the total right here at 60s, right? The books are expecting a lot of points in this one. Obviously the 12-point spread, some people are kind of considering this as a bit of a blowout risk. I do think this is one of those props, so that's kind of game script neutral. If they are down by 14 or so points, we're going to want Duggan throwing out there. We're going to need him to get those garbage time yards that'll help us kind of compile some of these fantasy scores. And if they're ahead, I really do expect them to lean on his legs a little bit. I think that's something that's being slept on. If you look at the rushing attempts these last two games, he's really been, when he's in doubt, he's just trusting himself. I think we especially see that at the goal line, which helps out with yours, right? Even against Kansas State, when he was beat up, injured, bruised, getting medical attention after pretty much every single drive, right? He still ended up getting a rushing touchdown in that one. So I expect him to put his body on the line, fight for those extra couple of yards. And I really do see him going over 30 fantasy points once again right here.
Yeah, no, I love that one. They've really kind of undersold those numbers, the touchdowns and the fantasy score. So I'm certainly going to be tailing you on that one because they're playing this underdog role, fighting for respect continuously, and he's definitely going to be doing some things and put up a healthy total, especially if it turns into a little bit of a semi-blowout, like you said, which leads me into my second and final pick here, which is going to be the NFL caliber receiver that you mentioned there, and Quentin Johnson, over 85.5 receiving yards. Really impressive season, despite the fact that early on he really wasn't that good. Failed to register 41 yards in his first 4 games, kind of got written off. I'm pretty DFS heavy with what I do. The community wrote him off really early, didn't think that, this was going to be a passing offense. Max did everything. Kendra Miller did everything, and quickly became one of the best pass catchers and possibly, one of the better NFL prospects on the board at the receiver spot. And the fact that he, didn't eclipse anything over 41 and still has 1,000 receiving yards shows you just how good he's been after that first quarter of the season. He does have 4 different games over 100 plus yards, which includes the last 2 and perhaps the most important last 2 games of their year. And there's really no reason for me to think that he can't put that up against Georgia. The opponents they just faced, Kansas State, Michigan, both pretty decent and tough defenses, especially Michigan's defense all year. And they just really got, smacked in the mouth early and was reeling, and they couldn't recover. And I could see something similar at the beginning if Georgia overlooks them, have a quick TCU score, Quentin, gets behind them, a big 70-yarder or something like that, which would be a perfect early scenario for us. And then we just have to, get a couple more receptions to really get over that number. So he is definitely a burner, but he makes them count when he gets the targets. A 63% catch rate, which is solid when you look at his logs, and a lot of 4 for 100s. Those type of players, you usually see kind of a lower catch rate because they're getting those bombs. But he is a type of guy who is making those grabs if it's even close to him remotely. He's been targeted 6+ times in 4 straight games, so it's really clear that they're going to be looking his way. They're going to be taking those shots, and he's just a capable guy in the midfield too. They can switch it up and put him on different spots in the field. So those heavy targets as he's been receiving, I feel pretty good about. Georgia has, recently, and I think we have to put QJ on the level of these guys, but their last 2 games, they gave up 100+ receiving yards to 2 different Ohio State receivers. And obviously they're just, those guys are future NFL caliber players as well. And 2 different LSU receivers over 100+ yards back on December 3rd. So they've definitely been beatable in the secondary. Similar, archetype with Jalen, Jaden Daniels, with being a running type of quarterback. Obviously Stroud's not a real big running guy, but good with his arm. in that type of atmosphere, they were able to do some damage to Georgia. So I feel like TCU will be able to do the same. This trend certainly favors QJ. They have enough weapons. It would be better if Kendre Miller played, but they have enough weapons and talent at the other spots where Georgia can't cheat over and totally just double, triple, and try to, take QJ completely out of the game, because if they do, they're going to be giving up some big plays on the other side of the field, or Max will just take off and do it with his legs. So they have to play him a little bit honest. Regardless of win or lose, whatever the result ends up being, I think a 100-plus yard game is pretty inevitable for Quentin Johnson. And it's a big surprise for me, because after that first quarter of the season, I never would have thought that I would be here talking about him in the national title, but he has definitely done well for his stock and is easily a top 5 guy in all of college football for receivers. So I'm a big fan of his, and I'm riding 2 TCU props here against Georgia. Might have lost my head, but that's where I'm at. So we're not completely against Georgia here. We do have a prop where we're going to be talking about a Georgia guy. So why don't you lay it on us in your second and final prop of the day?
Yep, I'll be taking us over to the Georgia side. We're going Kenny McIntosh over 21.5 receiving yards in this game right here. I'm pretty excited for this one. This number's been kind of bouncing around all week long, but I do still think we have some good value right here. When we look at kind of how this team has gone so far this season, he's had a pretty up and down year, but when we look at it, he's in a pretty 50-50 split, maybe 60-40, whatever you want. It's kind of a week-to-week change kind of thing. But when we look at what was he called to do in the biggest game of the season last week, 5 for 56 through the air. And that's really where he made his mark, getting a touchdown there as well. On the ground, not so much. The carries were a little bit more disappointing. I just love this guy. He's so explosive. He can, this is really kind of one of those props where you can get it in one catch. I'm expecting 3 to 4 targets in this game, but he's one of those guys that really can break off an explosive play. But for me, the biggest thing right here is game plan. Georgia cannot make mistakes. We talked about luck, and for me, I'm kind of a believer in creating your own luck. I think well-coached teams normally are the ones that are kind of seen as luckier, right? Because they make those plays happen. But when we look at how TCU has been winning these games, we have to acknowledge the pick six, the turnovers, all those kind of casual mistakes. Those are mistakes Georgia know they can't make, right? Michigan had a very good chance to win that game, and I mean, a lot of people will say this about a lot of TCU games. If you just control the ball, right? Georgia knows they're a better team than TCU, right? These are 2 strong teams. They both deserve to be here, but Georgia knows if they play their game, if they control the ball, if they don't turn the ball over, then they win this game. And I think McIntosh is going to be a huge part of that, whether it's in the screen game, whether it's taking checkdowns, whether it's just not turning the ball over. Those running back kind of easy plays, those easy chunk yardage plays are exactly what I think they're going to favor, whether they're winning or whether they're losing, right? Even if they're up 15, TCU has shown that they can be pretty strong against the run at times. Obviously, a unit that's, been up and down over the season, but I do think they will stand against the run. I think they'll force him to kind of beat them outside, and I think Georgia will want to get him in space in this game right here. Like I said, 56 yards in his last game, the biggest of the season. I just think we see plenty of screens. And once again, he's one of those guys too, not only the explosive plays, he'll run actual routes. A lot of running backs are kind of limited just to that check down roll. I obviously expect him to be involved in the check down roll, but he can, go motion into the slot. He can actually go run routes for you and make defenses scared. So obviously, all the attention in the world is on a guy like Brock Bowers, kind of limiting him. I think those underneath passes are going to be huge for Georgia winning this game. So I'm going to take 22 receiving yards, and I may even have to sprinkle, if we get an alt line somewhere, 40, 50 receiving yards, something like that. I think that could be some good value as well.
I love it. Yeah, they use a plethora of running backs, and it's tough sometimes because they all get their turns running the football. But one thing that's certain is Kenny Mack is going to get those targets and have a chance to rack up the receiving yards. So another one I'll definitely be tailing. I love it. So yeah, national title game tomorrow. End of the culmination of a long season. Stuart and Mike had done great this season on the PrizePicks show. I'm happy to get on here and do some stuff with you. Next season, we'll definitely have to collaborate more. Again, make sure you guys, if you haven't already, this is a perfect time to dip your toe in the water and try out PrizePicks. Get over there, PrizePicks, and use that code FTN for the deposit bonus match up to $100. It's a great benefit to have and give yourself a chance to, win a little bit of money in a game that you're probably going to be watching anyways. There's not really anything going on. The college basketball slate tomorrow is very lean, of course. So I'll be, doing the DFS thing here and watching this game, and it's going to be exciting. And I'm really looking forward to it. I appreciate Stuart. You can find him, of course, at Monotone Football on Twitter. Guys, make sure you're checking him out. Myself at DubDeuce85. And that's it for us. We'll see you guys later. And thanks for a great season.